fucking nailed it. I love an eccentric, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love who is just dedicates their life to their passions, however niche they may be, however off the beaten path. There's fucking romance and there's comedy and there's tragedy in that eccentric devotion to just a little corner of your desires. I don't know where that comes from. I've always been enamored with an eccentric. Maybe, who knows, it may be because maybe I'm a little of an eccentric myself. I don't know.
Maybe a tiny bit.
Maybe. So today, I'd love to open by talking to you about one such eccentric whose
Please
story.
Do.
Oh man, the story of Franz Reichelt has captivated me for many a year, and as this tale unfolds, you'll see why. And this guy is squarely fucking within the Joag purview, right?
Okay.
So come with me, if you would, to France and the turn of the century, when the 1800s became the 1900s, and join us, if you would, fade up on Franz Reichelt, who's moved to France from what is now the Czech Republic and opened a moderately successful tailoring business, right?
Okay, yeah, respectable.
Franz, very, very respectable. A ladies' dressmaker is Franz. Moderately respectable. Moved to Paris in 1898, and living. He took an apartment and opened up his dressmaking shop. Now, this is when the dawn of the aviation age was coming to rise. Okay, yeah. And hearing, as Franz did, of the burgeoning aviation technology and how the safety hadn't really been established as yet. There had been deaths, there had been crashes.
Sure.
So Franz looks at his job, looks at his skills, looks at his talents, and sets to work designing and developing a parachute suit.
A parachute suit?
Yes, a wearable parachute that you would wear, right? I mean, parachutes had been kind of prototyped and tested around that time. A lad by the name of André-Jacques Garnerin had invented a frameless kind of parachute. There were some fixed canopy parachute prototypes which were in use, but they were bulky, they were unreliable. Sure. So Franz,
there's nothing worse than an unreliable parachute.
Well, by the time you realize it's too fucking late, right? And I'd like to think those words were ringing in Franz's ears when he set about designing his parachute suit. Something not particularly bulky. Think the Batman's cape in The Dark Knight, like a frame that you would wear, and this fabric sits over it. So Reichelt kind of strives away in his tailors, in his shop. He conducts some tests on himself, right?
Okay, of course, yeah. I mean, you gotta
do it. He's driven, he's passionate. His early tests were quite successful. So he would equip dummies with kind of, and again, to use a superhero analogy, Spider-Man's little wings, his little squirrel wings under his arms, he would trial that kind of thing on dummies, and they would touch down quite gently, but converting that idea into a suit proved quite difficult. There were reports of him falling, jumps of 25 feet. He would land on bales of hay, he would use hay to break his fall.
I was going to say, it feels like you don't get a lot of attempts and getting that wrong.
Exactly.
But so he was prepared for this.
He was prepared, but his feeling was the heights, the low drops on his tests were hampering the data that he was able to gather. He was taking off from too low to the ground. Now, something happened in 1911. A colonel, an aviation colonel, in France offered a prize of 10,000 francs to anyone who could design a provably safe parachute for aviators. Okay. And this redoubled Richel's efforts. He refined his design. He reduced the weight. He managed to bring down the amount of material required to just 12 square meters, but his tests still weren't successful. He actually broke a leg.
He's like, he keeps hitting his bales of hay here, you know, hitting them hard. His parachutes aren't coming out, and he's like, the reason for this is I need a farther fall for that. Like, you need that momentum to get the.
Yep, exactly. You need terminal velocity. You need the wind in your fabric, as it were. Right. That's what he needed. So he petitioned the authorities in Paris to allow him to conduct a test from the Eiffel Tower.
Oh boy.
Okay. So on. And this was a back and forth with the authorities in Paris for quite some time. They were like, "No, we're not going to allow this. We're not going to." Yeah,
I could imagine they'd be a little hesitant to let someone jump off of the Eiffel Tower.
So he secured the permission from the authorities to conduct a test not from the top of the Eiffel Tower, but from a platform, kind of one of the first platforms of the Eiffel Tower, right? Under the proviso that he was going to use dummies. He was going to conduct this test on a dummy dropped from the first floor of the Eiffel Tower. Okay. So it's Sunday, the 4th of February.
Why do I feel like he's not going to use a dummy?
Franz rocks up to the Eiffel Tower in a car with two of his friends and steps out of the car. There are assembled press. There are assembled authorities. Because this test has the sanction of the Parisian authorities, they've cordoned off an area underneath the Eiffel Tower with ropes to avoid passers-by getting injured. Franz steps out of the car wearing his parachute suit.
Of course he does. He doesn't even like go up there and change into it. Like, oh,
no, sir.
Secret. He's like, nope. We're doing this.
And this is the picture that I build in my head of Franz. I build him up in my head as a showman. You know what I mean? As a driven, passionate character. And he announces there and then. Doesn't, like you said, doesn't even wait until he climbs the fucking tower. He announces there and then to the announcing press. Dummies, my fucking ass is what he says. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to leap off.
That's not actually what he says, right?
He didn't say that. If you want to know what he said.
I do want to know what he said.
Je veux tenter l'expérience moi-même et son chic, car je tiens à bien prouver la valeur de mon invention. He said, I want to try the experiment myself and without trickery, as I intend to prove the worth of my invention.
Okay.
All right.
That's hardcore.
That's what he fucking said, mate.
Yeah. Bold.
So there's a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of arguing with one of the guards, but eventually he climbs.
They just let him. They're like, all right. I mean, you came all this way. We did all this work.
All the way up, his friends continued to try and talk him out of it.
So they didn't know.
Oh, no. He kept it fucking quiet, right? Because this was how he'd managed to secure the tower.
I just figured his friends would have been aware. Like, they weren't like, nope. Buddy, why are you wearing that suit in the car?
Well, were they? It's just fucking Franz giving it guns. You know what I mean? He'll change his mind, but no, not today. His friends tried to. It was a very windy day. They were like, Franz, this is fuck. Don't do it. But he climbed the stairs, mounted the rails, paused, turned to the crowd. He was observed to hesitate for around 40 seconds while looking down, while testing the wind. Theatrically, he actually tested the wind direction by tearing a piece of paper out of a notebook and throwing it to the wind to see which direction the wind was blowing. According to reports, he was very calm, gave a smile, and leapt from that tower a little more than 187 feet above the ground.
Jesus Christ. And then he made it, right?
No. His parachute immediately folded around him and he plummeted to his death.
Oh, man. It's like, you'd know, like the second that like it it didn't work, like the parachute folds around you, you're like, fuck.
Yeah, exactly that. So the paper, the Petit Parisien, reports his right leg and left arm were crushed, his skull and spine broken, bleeding from his nose, mouth, and ears. He was fucked, mate.
And people were just watching this. Like there's press and everything just watched a dude lead to his death casually.
All of that passion, all of that investment and time and planning. But do you want to know something, Corrigan? Do you want to know what really places this right in the fucking JOAG Hall of Fame?
Oh, that wasn't it yet?
There's video.
I kind of was wondering.
There's video. The news footage that was taken on that morning survives and is free for anyone to view. Black and white, scratchy.
Where's the link?
Oh, there'll be a link. There'll be a link. So, Franz Reichelt, you live on, sir. You live on in my heart. You live on this week's episode of Jack of All Graves. And I salute you, sir, as just a fucking absolute shit parachute wearing suicidal mad lad.
Patience is a virtue.